very pleased to be here on this panel today discussing one of the most important and far-reaching issues in the country today. It's really a pretty pivotal moment in the country's history in which the future of democracy, civil liberties, and the rule of law are very much at stake. As we in Congress debate or don't debate how to deal with the criminal wrongdoing of the previous 8 years, how to set a new course for the future, the work of activists, bloggers, and journalists can play a decisive role in determining what happens. The stakes are tremendous. If we want to redeem our standing in the world, if we want to redeem the country, the rule of law, it's all very important. First and foremost, we now have to confront the consequences of the government having authorized and performed and outsourced torture, very deliberately, knowingly, and with malice aforethought. It's not a pretty picture. The investigations conducted by my subcommittee and by other congressional committees and in various court cases over the last few years have demonstrated unequivocally that the government did authorize torture, engage in torture, kidnap individuals, and turn them over to other governments for the purpose of being tortured. Despite the Bush administration's efforts to conceal and deny the facts, we know these crimes occurred. We know they were conceived and authorized at the highest levels. At the outset of his term in office, President Obama made an important start by clearly and unambiguously declaring that we will no longer engage in these criminal activities. It's good that he said so. It remains to be seen whether we do so, but it's good he said that. The more difficult question is what to do about the fact that these crimes were committed by people at the highest levels of our government, up to and including the Vice President and possibly the President. There's a great deal of reluctance to face the facts in this country, but here they are. One, torture is a crime. It's a crime under our domestic laws, under international obligations, the Convention Against Treaty, the Anti-Torture Law, etc., that the United States has adopted and consented to obey. Under these laws, we have an absolute obligation to prosecute people who violate the laws banning torture. This is not a matter of discretion. It's an absolute obligation in any contracting party, which is to say any signatory, which is to say the United States. And under the Anti-Torture Act of 1996, beginning treaty obligations, it's the law too. The administration has clearly stated that what occurred was torture. So what does that mean? We've admitted there was torture under our jurisdiction. We must therefore investigate and where warranted prosecute. There's no two ways about it, unless we want to violate the law. The President, by the way, has an obligation under the Constitution to see that the laws are faithfully executed. First job of the President listed in the Constitution. So there must be accountability. The facts must be the subject of an independent investigation. Where warranted, the guilty parties must be prosecuted and brought to justice. I believe the best way to ensure accountability without the taint of a conflict of interest or of politics is through the appointment of a special counsel with the authority to investigate and prosecute. The Justice Department itself was too deeply involved, especially through the Office of Legal Counsel, in the formulation and implementation of the torture policy. So I think it would be inappropriate and impossible for the department, even under new leadership, to proceed without at least the appearance of a conflict of interest. And that's why the department's own regulations mandate in certain circumstances the appointment of a special counsel. And were they to do it without a special counsel, it would raise questions of partisanship, which, even if untrue, would taint the result in the eyes of the public. Now, it's precisely for these rare circumstances that the Attorney General has the authority to appoint the special counsel. And I have said repeatedly to the Attorney General, Holder, and to his two predecessors, there is no alternative. I wrote to Gonzalez, a lot of good that would do, and to Mukasey, but you have to set the record, and to Mukasey and to Holder, saying you've got to appoint the special counsel. There is no alternative under the law. Now, there are problems with accountability. It brings with it difficulties. Never before has a new administration been called upon to investigate and prosecute its immediate predecessor. One could argue that Ford should have done so, but instead he pardoned his predecessor. So we are faced with historically unique circumstances, and as difficult and as traumatic as it may be for the nation, we must proceed. Now, the President has said, and let me just say, I have a lot of sympathy for the President in this situation. The President has said, and he said during the campaign too, he said two things, one of which I had no sympathy for. He said a lot of other things which I won't comment on, but during the campaign he kept saying, we're going to have bipartisanship. That's the thing I had no sympathy for. I wondered during the campaign whether he was naive and thought we could do that, or it was just or whether this was just a campaign ploy, in which case I'd have somewhat more sympathy for it. I still don't know the answer to that, but we're seeing what bipartisanship means in the context of one of the political parties is so narrow and right-wing and unwilling to have anything to do with by in any sense. The other thing he said was we have to look forward, not backward. Because the country has to go forward, we've got immense problems to deal with, and we do have very immense problems to deal with. And it's very difficult to do that if we're engaged in looking backwards and dealing with what happened. And I have a lot of sympathy for this because he's right. It will bring tremendous difficulties, because I guarantee you, now we have to do this in any event, but understand what we're getting into. The moment that it is announced that a special counsel is appointed to investigate crimes of the, or possible crimes that occurred under the Bush administration, and the moment that anybody, that it's focused on somebody, that the news leaks that they're really looking at Cheney, or they're really looking at this one or that one, or whoever, or that someone's indicted, the country will erupt, the right wing will erupt with, this is vengeance. This is partisan payback for the Clinton impeachment. Never mind no one remembers that, but this is political payback and vengeance. And the Obama administration, which has a lot to do on its part, certainly doesn't want to face that. And I don't blame them. I happen to believe, though, that for the security of this nation, for the future of liberty, we have to face that. We have to pay that price. Because you cannot allow these things to happen and not have any accountability, or they'll happen again. So, the good news now is that it has been leaked, and I've spoken to Holder about this and any number of other people since the beginning of the new administration, and they're studying it, which is only tells them a lot of this. And they may be correct, and you have to give them some time. But the word has now leaked, and I assume it's authoritative leak. It's gotten out any number of places, Washington Post, LA Times, that the administration, that Holder, oh, by the way, one of the charges we made at the Bush administration, and you see it in the stuff that's coming out about Rove and Myers and the U.S. attorneys, was that justice decisions, judicial type decisions were made for political reasons in the White House, and that's improper, and it is improper. And it would be just as improper for the president to decide that there ought to be or not ought to be special counsel, prosecutions, whatever. That is properly the decision of the Justice Department to be made on independent grounds, regardless of the political convenience or inconvenience to